I was browsing Reverb, and this Les Paul Deluxe happened to catch my attention. Because look at that thing. Clearly a really bad refinish job has occurred here. And on top of that, we can see a whole bunch of different signatures. Now, unfortunately, most of these have faded away. However, the seller is noting people like Dave Mason, Elliot Easton, Johnny Winter. If anybody else can identify any of these, feel free to leave some comments. Let's adjust the contrast and maybe a few more might be able to come out. I think this might be the supposed Johnny Winter over here. But with how much fading we have, it would be interesting if the seller were to do a blacklight test, as they might show up a little bit more, although that is definitely not guaranteed. Now, generally speaking, are signed guitars worth more? Not necessarily. I mean, when the artist is gone, then maybe there's a little bit more incentive to purchasing something like that. However, generally speaking, it can potentially devalue a guitar depending on where the artist has signed it. It just depends who it is and how often do they sign. But generally speaking, you're not getting crazy money for signed things unless it's in a charity auction. So when people get the common misconception of, oh, a signed guitar is worth so much money, it's because they've seen those. People are intentionally overpaying at those charity auctions. But as I was scrolling through these photos, I noticed, hey, that gold top's got some cool greening going on. Although it's in a slightly different hue than we're used to seeing. And you can see some more here along the edge, a little bit right there. But then I got to this photo and my jaw dropped. Excuse me, Mr. Seller. Is that a Basalt Blue Sparkle Deluxe? One of the holy grail colors of the Les Paul Deluxe model in history? Sure enough, there's a few other areas where that looks like the legitimate finish right underneath it. So my first instinct of this being a terrible refinish, definitely spot on, but now that's not greening we're seeing necessarily. It's just where our cheap rattle can gold paint job has been worn through in certain areas. And since they didn't remove the blue finish, I mean, remember, you don't know what's hiding under here. It could be a Kaler route. We can already see that the bridge pickup has been routed out for a full-size humbucker at one point. Looking up here on our neck, you might think the exact same thing has occurred. Now, it's possible they filled it in, but that might have just been a goof hider ring that was initially installed here. That's what these things are. Sometimes the factory would make a boo-boo when they're routing it, and they just throw those on there, and they pinned them to the top with pretty much a nail. It's certainly an acquired taste, but documented enough that we know that they are original. If you've always wanted a Blue Sparkle Top Deluxe, you could potentially turn this trash into treasure. However, you're faced with a moral dilemma here. You would be losing these signatures of some artists that aren't even with us anymore. However, we don't even know if they're authentic. They look good enough to me, but at best, you're going to have a humbucker routed Sparkle Top Deluxe. And that's if it wasn't refinished Blue Sparkle Top before somebody did that. However, you got to remember, back in those days, not everyone was into the glam rock scene. I could see somebody picking one up for a deal and spraying it over in gold, getting the color that they wanted. I mean, this thing was heavily played. I mean, you can see all the nicks and dings and wear through areas. We're even missing a whole bunch of screws over there. We got some dings straight in there, but sure enough, we do have that slight yellow creamy grain fill, so I believe this is within the era that the original Sparkle Tops were done. And looking at the full back, that neck finish does not look promising. Yep, sure enough, it's been snapped, and they probably did some more finish touch-up there. That is not what I would even consider a good repair. Stable, maybe, but not pretty. But there we go, we can verify. Serial number is within range, made in USA stamp. The larger headstock here makes me think this is probably circa 1975-ish. But you can see somebody has shallered it at one point in time and then restored it with a Grover version of a Kluson tuner, which means our headstock has likely also been reamed out. Yep, sure enough, we got the larger washers around the headstock, but you've got bigger problems on this one, whether the tuners are slightly larger than others. That Gibson logo is way too clear. They had to have sprayed a new layer of lacquer on that too. If we look at this photo, there's no longer fret nibs, so it's been refretted. Probably quite some time ago. They definitely need polished back up. But even some of these inlays are looking kind of bad. We even have a little bit of chipped binding over along the edge. And looking in our cavity, there's no way to further date this one. Those are replaced 500K Mojo pots. And we can also confirm Somebody put a different backplate on this at one point in time because we got double the screw holes we should. And the original case is missing. You've got a modern day detective version of the lift-in reissue with the double neck rest. That's like a $300 case on its own. That's perfectly acceptable. But I was proud of the seller coming over here, reading the title. Right on, man. How much is he asking? $5,200 plus shipping. Generally speaking, you can pick up a pretty nice deluxe for about $3,000 without any major repairs. However, when it comes to the blue sparkles, generally speaking, they're anywhere between $5,000 and $10,000, depending on a whole bunch of different factors. So it seems to me like he took the top half and discounted it by half as a way to have a starting asking price. Because that's the thing, you gotta start somewhere. He's open to offers, you can make him one. For me personally, there's too many unknowns here. Like, we're banking on that that's actually the original sparkle blue under there and not somebody else's retake on that and then somebody sprayed it over, as we were talking earlier. But at best, assuming you can strip off that top gold finish without there being any gremlins or errors along the way during that process, you've got a humbucker routed Sparkle Blue Deluxe with almost everything replaced with a really nasty headstock repair, which I would assume wouldn't be worth more than $4,000 to the very, very right guy. But I'll certainly watch this listing to see if it ends up in the hands of a restorer, because I think it's a worthy project if you've got the skills and you're open to a little bit of risk, or you can haggle quite a bit. But when I clicked on this photo, I had no idea that's what we were getting into here. Because just earlier that day, I'd saved this one in my watch list because it's just a beautiful natural one. I already have Double Vision in my collection, which is a natural deluxe that has a Les Paul model silk screen that was like doubly applied. I've always thought that one was cool, so I decided to keep it. But anytime there's a deluxe listed between $25,000 and $3,000, you gotta click on it. So this one, it's got the speed knobs. Now that I'm looking at those closer, it's either a really weird angle and they've aged considerably, or those are replacements. That little lacquer line right there, nothing to worry about. That's just where the woods join. Got a middle output jack plate. Okay. That's actually a much better angle for our speed knobs. I believe those to be original. That's why it's hard doing appraisals just by photos, because the angle really does matter on some of these things, but it's got the maple neck, so we know it's a post 75. When it comes to Les Paul Deluxe, the more expensive ones are the earlier 70s that have the ABR1 bridge and are Kalamazoo produced. Our serial tells us this is a 1978. Wow, very late. So almost an early 79 was probably when it was completed at the 360th day of the year. Nashville produced. As far as the top, looks like it's 3 pieces, but it's fairly well matched and beautiful. Although it says AI generated content at the bottom. I would imagine he used it to like color touch up something, because that looks like a legit photo to me. The only other thing I noticed is some sort of a repair has gone on with our toggle switch. So that might have been replaced at one point if they needed to use a locking nut. Or maybe they just lost the original skirted one. I can't tell you because I don't have the innard shots here. But we can peek a very nice chainsaw case. But he's asking $33 total. And while we're talking about deluxes here, I saw this one posted on Facebook and I thought we could look at it together. It was very common for people to modify the deluxes back in the day. Not as much anymore because they have their own kind of collector niche value. But at least routing out that bridge into a humbucker, super common. But do you see this? His neck pickup has the Gibson embossed logo, so that tells us this was most likely a 72 Deluxe. And do you see how much nicer this gold finish is as compared to that first one we were looking at today? Yeah, that's what people are after. But when they put the DiMarzios in there, it's also common to put these little mini toggles. So this one has all the common mods. Then we've got the, I think it's Stars guitar bridge. Then what looks like some sort of a PRS tailpiece thing going on. But check out that fretboard. That has been seasoned by years of play. The Clusons have also been replaced with period correct Grovers. That's pretty cool. You get the milk bottle style. However, now that I've seen how large the headstock is, I would want to see the pot codes to verify if that neck pickup's actually original. Because usually the earlier 70s Deluxe, they're still a bigger headstock, but I usually associate that more so with the mid-70s. This is a true 72. Also note the logo style. But see how it's just a little bit more shapely, whereas this one loses that characteristic and becomes a bit wider, and we've got the slightly more blocky Gibson logo. There's weird stuff all the time. It's just something I would suggest looking into, because serial numbers like these really don't mean much of anything. But also on my journey today, got a good chuckle out of this. Anyone want to buy my Gibson? It looks like absolute hot garbage trash. One of those cheap kit style guitars that you can put together yourself. You've got the scarf join, the bolt-on neck. It's basically trying to be an Epiphone special too, which is a nice guitar at the price. But this one is a satin finish, and somebody had a sense of humor. This very well might just be a white sticker. However, I want to think in my head that it's actually mother of pearl because it almost looks like it, but I really doubt it. It looks like they copied the B, but then just slightly modified it for Gibson. And then check out how tall the frets are. Almost unplayable in modern day standards. Something you can only get from a Gibson. Following another episode of ours, one for the lefties, another beautiful 2012 Les Paul standard was listed. A viewer of the show had actually sent this one in the day after I recorded that first amber one, and it's like, yeah, that's a very PRS-like top. Like, it's not the widest flame we've ever seen. It's not the pinstripiest, but it's got these interesting bulbous sections, I guess you could say. And that just really transforms the look of it. That, and you don't see the trans black finish like this every day. This might have had a little bit of sun fading to it, or it was sprayed a bit light at the factory. But 2012, 2013 Gibsons, they're great because they get the long neck tenon, which is usually reserved for the custom shop. And typically you get a whole bunch of fancy electronics. Now our bridge pickup has potentially been replaced on this one, so I don't know if you still have that stuff or not. It's easy enough on the Quick Connect system, but we also have Schaller strap locks here. And our pick guard's been removed, and we've got that straight black back, which is kind of a bummer when the top is so cool, but yeah, it's just part of this finish. It seems to be in pretty good shape. And all things considered, not the worst price in the world, especially if you make them an offer. Lefties don't have a lot of options today. Next up, let's get back to the 70s. There's a Les Paul Custom 20th anniversary. $13,000 is very high for one of these. However, you can't deny this one's got the look. It's not just a little bit aged, it's quite ambered over. It looks very similar to what you see on the Randy Rhoads Les Paul Custom, or what you would assume you would see. Aged, but like not too aged. Like this big ding up here where your arm kind of rests is a bit of a bummer. And a lot of the gold has been worn, but those original witch hat knobs are gorgeous. And something else that makes this one cool is it's got more of a late 60s, super early 70s case to it. So it helps bring out the natural amberedness of the hue as well. But indeed, it is a 20th anniversary, so that means it was part of the very first white Les Paul Customs ever produced. But if you want to get technical, Randy's did not have the 20th anniversary inlay. Good news for you, if you want to be crazy, you could take steel wool and wipe that part away, and then only if you're looking close will you see it, because they just slightly engraved each inlay. But also, hey, if you're an amateur dealer and you're doing a good thing cleaning up your guitars before you're offering for sale and you use the steel wool technique, make sure you mask off that inlay because they will fade. You can see it's happened a little bit right here. Thankfully, I did not learn that one from experience. I learned it, reading through guitar forums. So I've always been acutely aware of that. However, the nut looks replaced to me, but maybe they did a small touch-up over here to make it look like it's original. I suppose now that I think about it, these originally had bone. I don't see the usual pores. So that's another suspicion that I have of that. But then we get to the back, we can see some belt rash as well as some clear coat wear. And then when I got really confused was seeing this smile. It doesn't matter if this is just a crack or a full-on break, it devalues the guitar by about 50%. But now that I'm looking farther, that's tricky. I think it was starting to break, but it's really only surface level because you don't get that shape. I don't care if it's finished checking or not. You don't get that shape unless something has flexed. So I would think at least a 20% devaluation for that mark. If somebody were to ask me, but hey, we're just looking at guitars, having fun. We're not getting too serious here. But if you want to get serious on a guitar that you're interested in buying, I do offer private help sessions on my website, troglysguitarshow.com. But coming over here, we can see 1974 produced, 30th week. We had to clean that one up a little bit to see if it matches, but things look believable enough here. And there it is, side by side with an ebony one. He's currently asking $13,000, but He dropped it really quickly within 3 days from 15. Where do I think this particular example would sell? Maybe in that 5 to 6K range. And it's only because it's got the look. If it was any other finish and it had the headstock crack like that, you'd be talking $3,000 max. So that's quite a hefty premium on there for that, if we're being generous. And we'll end tonight with another unique one, an LPJ from 2013, only $700. I know. Are you sure Trogly is that authentic? With that giant weird Gibson logo. Don't ask me what they were thinking. But yes, that is authentic. There's also an SGJ. They're nice guitars if you can live with that. But they have a satin finish to them. And what's these stripes going on here? You also got that going on there, as well as back here. Someone has taken this top and sanded it down. What you're seeing are the exposed maple top and then the back edge of the mahogany body. That's a really cool look. Maybe it would pair better with like a dark amber finish rather than this worn white, but I've always been a big fan of exposing woods like that. Now, they likely did all this for playability, your arm resting. This area, I guess if you're playing a lot of solos up here, just having a little bit more out of your way might be nice, but it also could just be a visual thing. But for the back of the neck, they definitely just sculpted that just a tad. Not full-on access heel carve. They didn't want to break it, just enough for a little bit of fun. However, do I think this is the original finish on the body? It's at least been lightly sanded down, because the neck, I would believe, is still factory, but the body might have been redone. Or you know what? Maybe it is just a weird mix match, because remember, this is a perfect visualization of that. Light-colored maple, dark-colored mahogany. I think we can agree, at least the body's finish is the exact same. Right over here, you can see that lighter color on the mahogany, and it appears darker here. That seems to match. So maybe it is just a wood thing. But all right, troglodytes, that's enough fun for me tonight. Let's go ahead and catch you guys tomorrow on the next one. Take care.